Division 2 is almost here, and as usual with games like this, there's a lot going on, and we try getting together some of the more important new additions. Today on gameranx, here are 10 things you need to know about the Division 2. Starting off at number 10, the first game in the series took place in New York City, and the dev team actually did a pretty good job at recreating it. But this time around, we're taking a trip to good old Washington, D.C. Right away, you'll notice that not everything is covered in snow, which is a nice change, but I think it will be missed. And Massive actually has included a few different biomes this time around: city streets, smaller neighborhoods, and wilderness. While I'm a big fan of anything being covered in snow, getting a bit of variation is definitely nice. Massive also says that each biome will feel different and that you'll have to play a little differently as well. Also, Massive's version of DC is almost 1-to-1, so if you know your way around the city, you have a bit of advantage here. I, for one, am pretty excited to walk around the city and see all of the historical landmarks and, all of that stuff. Moving on to number 9, I'd say that character customization in the first game was pretty boring. Not so much how your agent themselves looked, but the clothing that they wore. Everything was just basic beanies and winter jackets, and while some stuff was added later on in expansions, it still wasn't great. Hopefully the Division 2 changes that. Ubisoft has said that we are going to get a bigger selection of clothing to choose from, and that they're also adding special vanity slots that you can use to show off different pieces of cosmetic gear that you can only get through certain activities. That I'm really into. Personally, it works kind of similar to Destiny. Like, if you see someone running around with a full set of Last Wish armor, you know that they finished that raid and got the armor and also got the bragging rights. In a game like the Division 2 where you spend hours playing, it's nice to be able to customize your agent to kind of suit you and not just look like everybody else. Self-expression, it's important even in video games. Coming in at number 8, Division will also offer PvP modes outside of the Dark Zone. Conflict will have 2 different modes and will launch with 3 different maps, with them planning on adding more maps and game modes in the future. You'll have both Domination and Skirmish to choose from at launch. Skirmish is pretty much team deathmatch, with Domination being similar to like Capture the Flag. There are players that love PvP, so it's cool that there's a way to take part of it outside of the Dark Zone. I know this is 2 totally different studios, but the PvP mode in Ghost Recon Wildlands was actually really fun because it didn't come across as a Black Ops 4, Apex Legends, or Overwatch. Like, it wasn't built to be a competitive PvP shooter. And the Division, I think, is kind of similar in that aspect. Yeah, there is a Dark Zone, but I think you get what I mean. At number 7, this time around, Division 2 is going to have raids. Now, we don't know a lot about the raids at the moment. We only have a few small details. What we do know is that they're coming at a later date, giving players time to level up and get strong enough to even take it on. And we know that they'll require 8 players to compete. And all 8 players have to work together to solve puzzles and take out bosses and high-leveled enemies. The Endgame specializations will also play a big part, which I'm assuming just means making sure that you have a team with a diverse set of gear to get through it. That's really all we have to go off of at the moment. It's also been confirmed that there will be multiple raids that will be added down the line. Moving on to number 6, for those of you that didn't play the first game, Dark Zones was an area that featured both PvE and PvP combat. All players would work on getting high-leveled loot and then extracting it from the Dark Zone while possibly fighting off other players that had went rogue and other enemies. It was a very high-risk, high-reward activity. In the Division 2, they're changing it up a little bit. First off, the matchmaking is changing. The game will try to match you with players closer to your level and world tier, and will try to match solo players with other solo players. Gear will also be normalized, so there isn't someone running around with a crazy build just straight up murdering everyone. Turrets have also been set up at the entrances of Dark Zones, so players that are just jumping in don't get murdered by camping enemy players or AI enemies. Rogue agents also work a little bit differently as well. Rogue agents will be able to pick the locks of supply drops, hack into terminals to gain resources, and also steal enemy loot as it's in the process of being extracted. There are also 3 different rogue agent tiers: Rogue, Disavowed Rogue, and Manhunt. We don't really know too much about these tiers yet. This all leads us into our next point. At number 5, another way Massive is changing up the Dark Zone is by adding occupied Dark Zones. So Dark Zones are already pretty challenging, high risk reward type activity as it is, and like we just talked about, they're making a lot of good changes to make it better. Another addition are these occupied Dark Zones. So take the entry turrets, the level and gear normalization, and the rogue agent tiers, and just toss them out the window. Because occupied Dark Zones are for the hardest of the hardcore players. One of the 3 Dark Zones can enter the occupied state at any time. When that happens, gear normalization doesn't matter, so whatever level you are and whatever build you're rocking actually matters here. So if you find the Dark Zone a little too easy and not at all that fulfilling, then you can wait for it to become occupied and jump in then, because it's going to be a lot harder. Moving on to number 4, this time around Massive seems to be putting a lot of emphasis on the Division 2's endgame. After completing the game, a new enemy faction called the Black Tusk will show up. You'll find them all over DC in strongholds, occupied dark zones, fighting with other factions in the street. The Black Tusk are much stronger than the other factions and have a focus on robotics. They utilize drones, mini tanks, and robot dog things, which are actually really creepy to look at. World tiers come into play too after you finish the game, and you'll get higher world tiers as you level up your agent, which we won't get too much into because that's returning from the previous game. But while we're on the topic of endgame stuff, let's get on to our next point. Coming in at number 3, agent specializations are another part of the endgame. After hitting level 30, you'll be able to unlock one of 3 specializations, which will unlock a brand new weapon and brand new skills. You have the survivor specialization, which gives you access to a crossbow, and you'll focus on using traps and other status effects. Then next we have the sharpshooter, which gives you access to a big ass 50 caliber sniper rifle that can rip through enemies from a distance. Then lastly we have the demolition specialization, and here you'll be wielding a grenade launcher to really mess with enemies. I guess they kind of act as like subclasses, and you're able to switch whenever you want. It also makes the end game a bit more interesting, seeing that you get a new weapon and new skills to use. Additional specializations are also supposed to be released later on down the line as well. Coming up at number 2, as expected with any games as a service type thing, we have to talk about the season pass and expansions. As of right now for year 1, there are 3 major expansions planned, and the main content of each is going to be available to all players for free. If you do purchase the season pass, however, you get access to everything 7 days earlier than non-season pass holders. You also get instant access to the 3 specializations, while other players have to do a bit of grinding. You'll also get access to the additional missions that will reward you with exclusive vanity items. There will be some additional monetization as well. You'll be able to purchase skins and other cosmetic items with real money, but you can also earn them in-game as well. There will be loot boxes added after launch that will be strictly cosmetic stuff, with normal ones being around all the time and event-specific ones launching with certain events. It's safe to assume that these will also cost real-world money. Finally, at number 1, we have some housekeeping to get out of the way. As usual with Ubisoft titles, there are a ton of different editions and ways to buy the Division 2. First off, there's the Lullaby exotic shotgun and hazmat suit that you'll get from pre-ordering the game pretty much anywhere. Then, of course, there's your standard edition of the game, the gold edition of the game that comes with the year 1 pass and 3 days early access to the game, the ultimate edition that comes with the year 1 pass, 3 days early access to the game, and 3 exclusive cosmetic and weapon packs. Then we have the Dark Zone Definitive Edition, which is essentially the Ultimate Edition with the book of lithographs, the soundtrack, a Washington, D.C. map, and a statue of Heather Ward. Then, exclusive to the Ubisoft store, there's the Phoenix Shield Collector's Edition, which has everything the Ultimate Edition and the Dark Zone Definitive Edition has, minus the statue, but instead you get an articulated figure of Brian Johnson and a steelbook. And those are 10 things you need to know about the Division 2, but we want to hear from you, so meet us down in the comments and let us know what you think. Which specializations do you think you're going to main, and how do you feel about the changes made to the Dark Zone? As I'm sure you already know, liking this video really helps us out, and if you're new here, subscribing is a good idea because we put out videos like this every single day. As always, thank you for stopping by to hang out with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.